A lot of them get it from their brothers and sisters at home. Grandma and Grandpa come over and they put their 2 cents worth in. They give them some insights into how they are. We send them off to school and their teachers give them all kinds of information about themselves. But primarily our children look to us as their parents for the information about themselves. And we give them all kinds of information too. Well, most of the time though, when we're doing it, we don't even think about it. Well, things like this will happen. We'll be in a grocery store. We'll have one of our children with us. We'll meet somebody that we know a little bit. So it's only natural for us to introduce the child that we have with us and to say a few things about him or her. We'll say something like, well, this is my daughter, Sally. Oh, Sally's my really smart child. You know, she gets all A's in school. We're thinking one day she's going to be the valedictorian of her class. You know what the first thing is she does when she comes home from school? Well, she does her homework. She always has such a positive attitude about everything, it seems. Well, you can imagine Sally just soaking up all that positive information about herself. Another time we'll have our son with us and we'll say, well, this is my son, Jason. Jason, get out of there, son. Put that back before you break it. Oh, that kid, he's out of control. Homework? Well, he won't do anything that the teachers say. You know, it's just a joke. We've given up on Jason in school. How old? Well, he's 7, you know. But we just know he's not going to make it through. I've got to admit, though, he is cute, don't you think? Come on. Oh, well, forget it. Jason is the shyest child on the face of this earth. Well, you can imagine Jason soaking up all that negative information about himself. Well, step 2, our kids start to make conclusions out of the information. Conclusions like, oh, I'm smart, I love school, I always have a positive attitude about things. Going to be the valedictorian in my class one day. Conclusions like, oh, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, never going to make it through school, I'm just a troublemaker. Besides that, I'm shy. Well, step 3, our kids look around for evidence to support their conclusion, which they always find. They always find it because of one of the other ways we are as human beings. One of the other ways we are as human beings? Well, once we make a conclusion about ourselves, we always find the evidence to support it. Our children are very much the same way. Well, step 4, our kids start to repeat these conclusions to themselves in their own mind over and over again. It's called self-talk. How many of you, by the way, talk to yourselves? Can I see the hands? Yeah, that's a good 80% of us. The other 20% still thinking about it. Let's see now. Do I talk? Well, I don't know, you know, maybe. Well, our kids start to repeat these conclusions to themselves over and over again. They find more and more evidence. All that self-talk, all that evidence mixes together until those conclusions solidify. They solidify into what we know as solid beliefs. And then our kids act according to these beliefs on a daily basis, just automatically, without even thinking about it. Perfectly fine if it's a positive belief they picked up about themselves, but it's a pretty negative limiting thing, of course, if it's a negative belief that they picked up. Well, let me share with you a true story from my childhood, and I think it'll put this process into perspective for you. Before I tell this story, though, there's a line in the story for everyone here, and I'd like it if you'd practice your line together before I tell the story. Your line goes like this. Aww. Can you practice that together, please? Aww. Oh, well, very good. I think you'll know exactly when to come in with your line. When I was in the 2nd grade, one of my very favorite things to do was to draw. I absolutely loved to draw, and so I was very happy one Tuesday afternoon when the teacher said, we're going to have art class today, and you can take out your papers and draw anything that you like. Well, I grew up in a very small dairy town in southwestern Wisconsin. Beautiful little town, 2,500 people, and a beautiful little valley in Wisconsin. I was drawing some of the hills behind my house. Had a couple trees on those hills. One side of the picture I had a deer, the other side a rabbit. I was so proud of this drawing. I was sure hoping the teacher would come by and say something nice about it. Sure enough, just as I was coloring everything in, she stopped right at my desk, picked up my paper, and I was smiling from ear to ear because she said to the whole class, everyone look up here at Larry's picture. Everyone looked up there and she said, you see these 2 lollipop trees Larry's drawing? Well, you see, he's still drawing baby pictures. Oh, well, step 1 had some information about myself. Step 2 made a conclusion out of the information. Conclusion which said, I can't draw. Now, a little side note here, was that what the teacher was intending? No, most certainly not. But Intentions don't have anything at all to do with the belief process. We as parents, well, we can have 100% purely positive intentions to help our kids grow up with positive beliefs about themselves. But if we go about it in a negative way, we can actually do the opposite. Talk more about that in just a minute. Step 3, look around for evidence to support my conclusion. In other words, I draw things from then on, look at it and go, yeah, teacher's right, I really can't draw. Step 4, it became very much a part of my self-talk. In other words, by the time I got up into high school, you get into biology, you're supposed to draw frogs and guts, and worms and stuff like that. I just refused to do it. My self-talk was very strong. I can't draw. I get somebody else to do it for me. Now, I acted according to that belief until I was 35 years of age. That was 2 years ago. No, that's where the awe goes. Now, come on, keep up here. When I was 35, I was in a bookstore with one of my daughters. She wanted this book on drawing, so I said, well, bring it over here. Let's take a look at it. Open it up, introduction, big bold print, it said, the definition of talent is practice. I thought to myself, oh, sure, everybody knows you're either born with a talent or not. What's this practice stuff? Yeah, we took that book home, started practicing. After a couple months, I was back drawing again. Eventually came to draw charcoal portraits of people. That's a very interesting thing as an adult to come upon a negative belief that you thought was true about yourself and find out that it's not. It's almost shocking, actually, because we think of the beliefs that we have about ourselves as the way we were born, as the way God made us, if you will. And then to find out, no, that's not the way it is with beliefs. Beliefs just made out of information. Oftentimes information that we pick up when we're very young, born out of conclusions that are made with the immature minds of children, and yet here we are today as adults acting according to them. Well, before I tell you how we can use this information to make sure our kids grow up with the kind of beliefs we want them to grow up with, let me just spend a moment to talk to you about a negative theory of parenting that we picked up from our parents' generation. Our parents used this theory with the very best of intentions, but it had a pretty negative impact on many of us as we were growing up, and it continues to negatively impact many of our children as well. The theory that I'm talking about is the one that went like this. Our parents said, well, I want to raise my kids up to be good people, and so the best thing for me to do then as a parent is to point out to them what their faults are. That way they'll be able to correct their faults, and they'll grow up to be a better person for it. In practice, it went pretty much like this. Let's say, for example, that you're my son. Your name is what? Kirk. Let's say that Kirk is my 16-year-old son. Let's say I want him to grow up being a hard-working, responsible young man. Let's further say it's Friday. Kirk has been calling me at work all day long, begging to use the car tonight because he's got a hot date. So I finally get home, and I say, well, all right, Kirk, you can use the car tonight, but what about all those chores you promised me you're going to do this weekend? You going to do them? Yeah, you bet, sure. I have a smart young son here, sure. So I say, fine. So he goes off, and now let's say that it's 11 o'clock on Sunday night. Kirk is heading for the bed. I call him aside, and I say, Kirk, did you do your chores this weekend, son? You tried. You tried. You tried. Now, let's be honest here, son. You didn't do squat around here, did you? No. I didn't say anything to you about it because I wanted to find out if I was right about you, and unfortunately, I did. You know what your problem is, Kirk? No. Problem here is, son, you're just plain lazy. You're lazy, you're irresponsible, and I hate to tell you this about yourself, but you're never going to amount to anything. Oh, yeah. Now, why in the world would a parent approach a child in such a fashion? Well, there's this twofold logic. We got it from our parents' generation. I suppose they got it from theirs. First part of the logic, I'm providing my son here with some insight into one of his faults. He has no insight of his own. Someone's got to point out to him what his faults are, don't they? Doesn't that fall to me as his parent? Doesn't it? Secondly, I'm being harsh with him. Now, why in the world am I being so harsh with him? Well, not because I don't love him. No, I love him 100%. He's my son. No, I'm being harsh with him in order to motivate him to change. So insight plus motivation, that'd seem to be pretty fine, wouldn't it? But unfortunately, it just flies in the face of this belief process, doesn't it? Because if I tell Kirk here often enough that he's lazy and irresponsible, what may well happen? Yeah, may I grow up exactly like that. Number one strategy that we use in our American families in order to motivate our children to change is criticism. Criticism is also, by the way, the number one strategy that we use in every single relationship in order to motivate people to change. Doesn't really matter whether it's parent to child, even teacher to student, spouse to spouse even, friend to friend, employer to employee. Number one thing we do to motivate other people to change more to our own liking is to criticize them. Now, I find this of great interest because of something that we know about our own selves. One of the things that we know about our own selves is we know we hate it when someone gets in our face to criticize us. Well, you know this is true. Think about this for a moment. How many of you, well, go back in your memories. Go back to the last time someone got in your face to criticize you. How many of you, when you went to bed that night, thought to yourself, I think I'll get up tomorrow morning and write a thank you note for that criticism? Anybody do that this morning? Probably not. Probably out of more common human reaction to it. Probably made you angry, resentful. Did it not make you highly critical of the person who was criticizing you? Good chance that it did. We cannot afford this cycle of criticism in our families. We can't afford it because you see, criticism destroys relationships. Destroys relationships because of, yet again, another way we are as human beings. One of the other ways we are as human beings, well, we will not stay in a positive relationship with someone who is always criticizing us. No, we will not do it. We'll do one of two things. First of all, we will try to get away from that person. If we cannot get away from that person, what we will do is dig our heels in, refuse to cooperate, and we will try to make that person as miserable as they've made us with that criticism. We cannot afford that in our families because you see there are literally millions of American parents out there today who have lousy, stinking relationships with their teenagers. A lot of them got to these lousy, stinking relationships through this well-intended use of criticism. But here's good news, though. There's also literally millions of American parents out there today who have great relationships with their teenagers. They will say to you, oh, we have a great time together. We talk all the time. We do all kinds of things together as a family. Look, my kids even come home and tell me what their problems are and ask me for my advice. We, of course, want to count ourselves among those parents as our children grow up. So I'd like to share with you a very powerful process tonight, one of which you can use for three things. First of all, you can use it to make sure your kids grow up with very positive beliefs about themselves. Secondly, you can use it to make sure that you build and maintain a very positive relationship with your children as they grow up. And thirdly, you can even use it to heal a lousy, stinking relationship with a child should you encounter one of those. Well, the first step in this process is where you do a little bit of writing again. You get that paper and pencil back out. You want to write down all of the positive characteristics and traits that you want your children growing up believing to be true about themselves. This is on page 2 of your handout there. You can look. There's about my top 20, I think, positive traits and characteristics I want my kids growing up believing to be true about themselves. Let me suppose with you for a moment that every positive thing on that list is true about every single one of our children. I think that's true. In fact, I know that's true because that's the way our children are born. They're born with all of God's good within them. But if you write down all of the negative of these characteristics, well, the potential for all the bad is there as well. Because our kids are born that way. They're born with the potential for all of the good and bad within them. To the degree that our children grow up believing these positive characteristics to be true about themselves, or the negative, well, that has an awful lot to do with the information that our children get from us as they grow up. So I suggest, first of all, pick out 3 things off of this list so you can focus on these 3 things, so you can try out this idea to see if it's a powerful idea for good in your family. Now, if someone would pick off one thing off of this list, and we'll use it for an example for the next few steps. Someone give me one thing.
On time.
On time. So you have a dreamer out here. We want a mom that wants her child to be on time. And your name is what?
Amanda.
Amanda. Let's say that Amanda's my daughter here. Yeah, I I want my kids to be on time because I know they're going to have a much higher quality of life. You know, they're going to get along better. If she's my daughter, she's going to get along better with me and her mother at home if she's on time. Going to get along a lot better with her teachers at school if she's on time. When she gets a job, she's going to get along better. She's going to have a much higher quality of life. Heck, it's even going to affect the quality of her love relationships if she's on time. But I have a problem here with Amanda. Because you know what? Amanda, she's just late all the time. She's late all the time, you know. I mean, she can't get up in the bed, you know, get up on time. She can't go to bed on time. And in between, she's always late, you know. That's just the way she is. Well, actually, the problem here isn't with Amanda, is it? No, it's with me. Because for as long as I try to motivate her through the negative, it's not going to work. Because you can never, ever, you know, don't fool yourselves. You can never, ever get to the positive through the negative. Oh, I realize in raising 5 kids that you can get suckered down that negative road. I mean, our kids with their negative attitudes and misbehavior, we can get very, very frustrated with them, and so we can start marching down that negative road. But make no mistake about it, there's only one thing at the end of that negative road, and that's a lousy, stinking relationship with your child. It's all that's down there. So if I want Amanda here to grow up being on time, and I want Kirk to grow up being a hard-working, responsible young man, I've got to find a different strategy. Now, by the way, before I get into that strategy, I'm not going to let Amanda be late. I'm not going to let Kirk get away with not doing his chores. I'm going to have some rules and consequences about that stuff. But that is not a negative thing. No, it's not negative at all. In fact, the kids that are doing very well out there in life today, well, these are the kids that have parents at home that have rules and consequences for them. In fact, here's a way of knowing whether you're doing a really great job as a parent. That's if your kids are always complaining about how strict you are, you know? Especially if they're saying things like, oh, the other parents don't do this. No. Oh, yeah, great. Yeah, I'm doing a great job. Now I know, you know. Because the other parents' kids are out there running the street. Oh, this is a good thing, not a bad thing. Well, that being said, I'm going to move on to a very positive strategy here. First thing I'm going to do, well, I'm going to give you an example here, and I'm going to, then I'll come back and break it down into the steps. Let's say I'm working with Kirk here, and I want him to grow up being a hard-working, responsible young man. First thing I'm going to do is look for any little bit of evidence that I can find that he is a hard-working, responsible young man. I say you look for a little bit of evidence because if you look for a lot of evidence, you're never going to find it, and you're never going to get to the step 2. It's not going to do you or your child any good. So I look for a little bit of evidence that he's a hard-working, responsible young man. Sure enough, I go away for a weekend. I come home. My wife says to me, you know, Kirk this weekend did all the chores you left for him to do. Plus, I needed for him to do a bunch of stuff, and he did that as well. Worked hard, did a good job. So I have a little bit of evidence. Kirk is heading for the bed. It's 11 o'clock on Sunday night. I call him aside, and I say, Kirk, you know, your mother told me this weekend about how hard you worked on all those chores, plus all the stuff she needed for you to do. You did all that stuff. You know, it tells me you're a hard-working, responsible young man, and I appreciate that about you. Now, I've done 3 things here. I pointed out some positive evidence to him that this characteristic was true about him. It's very, very important to attach to the evidence. If you don't attach it to the evidence, it just goes in one ear out the other. You attach it to the evidence, and then I labeled him with a positive characteristic. It tells me you're a hard-working, responsible young man. And then thirdly, what I did was I told him I appreciated that about himself. You know, he did all the chores. Tells me you're a hard-working, responsible young man. I appreciate that about you. I'm going to do the same thing for Amanda here, you know. She gets up, you know, one day. She gets up on time, gets out the door today. You know, I don't know, maybe she's meeting her boyfriend or something. I don't know. But she's on time. She's on time, you know, and I say, you know, supper's at 6 o'clock tonight, and she shows up right at 6 o'clock, in fact, a little bit early, and helps her mama set the table and get the food on the table, you know. I can call her aside when she's heading for the bed. By the way, it's always powerful to do this right before they're going to bed, you know. Say, Amanda, you know, today you got up on time, got out the door to school on time. You know, I didn't even have to get after you about it. You know, you did it all on yourself. I told you what time supper was. You were right there, you know, in fact, a little bit early. You know, you're just really an on-time kind of person, and I appreciate that about you. This stuff is magic. It's magic because one of the best things I know about being a parent, sometimes you can tell a child something positive about him or herself one time, and they may believe you for a lifetime. That's pretty wonderful, isn't it? When you think of all the opportunities there are to point out positive stuff about our kids. But this stuff gets better. It gets better because it comes with a guarantee. The guarantee is this. I take the time 3 or 4 times to point out the evidence to Kirk that he's a hard-working, responsible young man. The same thing for Amanda here, that she's an on-time kind of person. There's only one thing that's going to happen with that, and that is these kids are going to go out into the world and they're going to prove that it's true about themselves. Let me give you a couple ways to do this stuff. This is very, very powerful because every time you take the time and the effort to do this, you build your relationship with your child. Not only build their beliefs, but you build a relationship with them. It's always powerful to do this one-on-one, but here's a couple other ways that my wife and I used to do this. Some of my favorite ways. You know, one of the ways we used to do it is that we would stand beneath the air conditioning vents when the kids were up in their rooms, you know, and do the same exact thing, you know, through the air conditioning vents, you know. Oh, Amanda was on time today. You said, you know, she got up, you know, and got herself out the door on time. She came home, was at supper on time. You know, she's just a really on time kind of young lady, isn't it? You know, I really appreciate that about her. You know, this is kind of neat because a couple of our daughters were home a while back and they were talking about how we were as parents when they were growing up, and one of them said, oh, you know, we used to hear everything you and Mom would say, you know, through the air conditioning vents. And we're going, oh, really? We didn't know, you know. Here is my very favorite way of doing this. You wait until the kids go to bed. You sit down to watch a little television. You take with you a pencil and a piece of paper. You know, you wait for a commercial. During that commercial, you write the very exact same thing out. You know, Kirk, this morning, you know, or this weekend when I was gone, you did all your chores, plus all that other stuff Mama had for you to do. You know, it tells me you're a hard-working, responsible young man, and I appreciate that about you. I son that loved Daddy. I'd take a piece of tape. I'd put that on the mirror where he's going to find it first thing in the morning. You know what's going to happen to those notes? Oh, they're going to disappear. You're most likely never going to see them again. Where are they going to disappear to? Well, straight into your child's heart. And from there, they will never, ever disappear. No, not at all. This stuff is absolutely wonderful to do with children. Every time you do it, you build that relationship with your child. That relationship one day becomes so strong, it becomes stronger than steel. Oh, you can't see it? No, you can't see it, but stronger than steel nevertheless. One day it will never, ever break. Oh, it might bend here and there, but make no mistake about it, it will not break. Even as powerful as this stuff is, though, I realize it's very difficult to do. It's difficult for several reasons. One reason is because some parents say to me, hey, now, wait a minute. I read articles lately that warn about this very exact thing you're talking about. They say you go around praising your child all the time, it's just going to go to their head. Make them immodest. Give them one of those bloated egos. It's not going to be a good thing at all. Well, let's think about this for a moment. How many of you, when you grew up, got too much praise because of them? How many of you know someone who walks around in life with their head hung low going, oh, you know what my problem is? I'm just a loser because my parents praise me all the time, you know. Just ruined my whole life. You know. Where do they get this stuff? I don't know. Some parents say, no. Let's be fair here. I've tried this stuff with my children, or at least with them, it does not work. Because you see, I get positive with my kids, and all that happens is they just get negative back with me. Well, if that's what's happening in your family, it means a couple things. First of all, it means you're most likely raising teenagers. Yeah, sure. And these kids are saying to you in the only way they can, look, I think this is a bunch of garbage. I don't believe this one little bit, so I'm going to test you out. Our kids oftentimes test us out very, very frequently. Unfortunately, many of us flunk these tests almost immediately. We get positive with our kids, they get negative back with us, so what do? Well, we just shinny right up that high dive and jump right off, you know, dive right down into that swirling pool of negativity with them and drown right in there with them. What our kids need for us to do is to pass that test and go, it's all right, Kirk, it's all right, Amanda, just wanted you to know, and continually point out the positive stuff. I had one mother tell me, this was this was really something. I was up in West Bend, Indiana. She came up to me all excited after the seminar, and she said, I can hardly wait to try this stuff out with my grandchildren. Oh, it's going to be powerful. It's going to be wonderful in their lives. I can hardly wait. But she said, oh, it's too bad. It's not going to work with my 15-year-old daughter. Well, why? What do you mean? Why would it be so powerful for your grandchildren but not for your own daughter? She said, well, all those positive things on that list. See, the problem is not one of those things true about my daughter. Well, ma'am, I'm sorry you missed the point. Every single one of those things true about every single one of our kids. All you got to do is just seek that little bit of evidence, and you will find it. Let me prove to you that this will work 100% of the time for 100% of your children. To do that, let me take you down memory lane. Let me take you back to the time you taught your children how to talk and how to walk. Those are the two most difficult things that you will ever teach your children how to do. Art of ambulation, art of language, very, very difficult. Yet we teach our children when they're little babies. How did we do it? Well, did we not do it through the 100% purely positive? Didn't we? Did it occur to you in that process, even for one moment, to say something like, oh, Johnny, that's the 10th time you fell down today, son. Now, you might as well give it up, By the way, it's not Dada, it's Daddy. Can you get it right one time? No, we didn't do that, did we? No. We look for any little bit of evidence in the right direction. Oh, Johnny, that's your first step. Oh, take another one, son. Oh, you're walking. Come to Daddy. Call Grandma, call Grandpa. Get everybody over here. Johnny's walking. And isn't this interesting? Even though we don't see ourselves as one of those really positive people, and by the way, we all know one of those really positive people, don't we? We just know they bounce out of bed in the morning. They bounce into their clothes. They bounce into work. We want to bounce them out the back door, No, they're wonderful to be around. They're great to be around. But we say, well, that's not who and what I am. Well, isn't that interesting? When we were teaching our children how to talk and how to walk, there was a center of positive energy that just came out naturally. Well, maybe we did not use it all up. Maybe they have some of it left over to point out to our children these very positive things are true about themselves so that they can include them in their identities as they're growing up. Oh, lucky. Well, no, forget lucky. Blessed are the children who take the time and the effort to point out to them that these very positive characteristics and traits are true about themselves. Blessed are your children. You've been a great audience tonight. Good night. God bless. Thank you.